On this Tuesday night, the rise in racist attacks against Asians.
Be a good human being. We need love and kindness.
The amplified voices demanding government action. A deadly rampage inside a Colorado grocery store.
Let's just run, get out of there, tell everybody to leave.
The survivors and the victims. New scrutiny of Oxford AstraZeneca's vaccine. The accusations of cherry-picking data. And when flu season doesn't go viral.
Influenza is actually at a historic low.
A plus side to all those pandemic precautions.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We have a hate problem in this country and it's getting worse over the course of the pandemic. A new report has documented more than 1,000 racist incidents targeting people of Asian descent over the last year, from people being spat on to more physical acts of aggression. And these are just self-reported incidents. The scope of the problem is likely bigger. Travis Dhanraj has our top story tonight.
It is disturbing to watch, but also conveys a powerful message. This Calgary woman skateboarding. A man on a bike passing by spits on her, hurling a racial slur. A 92-year-old Asian man with dementia grabbed and thrown out of this Vancouver convenience store, slamming his head on the pavement. Incidents across the country fueled by fear over the pandemic. Abigail has personal experience. This summer, a group of young people spat on the Toronto lawyer when she was out for a walk.
These races target seniors, young people, as well as people who may not speak English as their first language. So we're talking about a more vulnerable population within our society being the targets.
A new report from the Chinese-Canadian National Council echoes that. It breaks down 643 complaints received from March to December last year. And what it details is disturbing. Verbal harassment accounts for about 73% of the incidents. Nearly 11% involve some sort of unwanted physical contact, aggression, or physical force. Almost 10% are related to the shunning of Asian Canadians, and another 10% involve spitting or coughing on Asians.
So survivors of, racist attacks should have counseling support, individual-based support, community-based support that's linguistically accessible, and culturally relevant.
The report also found about 60% of the incidents were directed toward women. Canada's top doctor, Theresa Tam, has also faced race-based social media vitriol.
Absolutely, we should not tolerate hate or racism against any groups in our community.
Still, Asian Canadians are standing tall, fighting back, denouncing hate. In Montreal, hundreds rallied this weekend after the murders of 6 Asian women in Atlanta, Georgia.
Give us a break. Enough is enough. Stop hurting one another.
On the streets in Toronto's Chinatown, optimism a vaccine and end to COVID will also help subdue the spread of fear and discrimination.
Hopefully, we'll be able to go beyond that and everyone will be able to get along. Hopefully the world will come back to normal.
Travis Dhanraj, Global News, Toronto.
The U.S. is reckoning with its own racism directed at Asian Americans. The organization Stop AAPI Hate documented nearly 3,800 incidents between March 2020 to the end of last month. The majority, 68%, was verbal harassment. 11% involved physical assaults. Last week's shootings at 3 Atlanta area massage parlors have further fueled fears about violence against people in the Asian community. Of the 8 victims, 6 were women of Asian descent. 10 people, including a police officer, are dead after an attack at a Colorado grocery store. It's the second mass shooting in the U.S. in less than a week. Today, Boulder Police Chief Maris Herold fought back tears as she read the victims' names one by one.
Denny Strong, 20 years old. Nevin Studinsky, 23. Ricky Odds, 25. Trelona Barkanoviak, 49. Suzanne Fountain, 59. Terry Leiker, 51. Officer Eric Talley, 51. Kevin Mahoney, 61. Lynn Murray, 62. Jody Waters, 65.
The 21-year-old suspect faces 10 counts of first-degree murder, and as Jackson Proskow reports, police still don't have a motive.
Gunshots rang through the supermarket Monday afternoon as a single shooter turned his sights on shoppers and store employees.
Somebody had their hand on my back, I had my hand on somebody's back, and we were just saying, go, 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 run.
The first police officer on the scene, 51-year-old Eric Talley, was killed. An 11-year veteran of the Boulder police, Talley's cruiser now sits as a memorial outside the local police department.
You know, it's tragic. This officer had 7 children, ages 5 to 18.
In this small city, the shooting hits close to home for almost everyone.
The people who were killed yesterday were individuals going about their daily business when a man with a gun monstrously struck them down.
The alleged gunman is a 21-year-old man who was shot through the leg before his arrest. He's been charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Investigators believe he bought the rifle used in the attack just 6 days ago.
The unfairness of it all, this is going to be difficult for people to process.
Colorado has become synonymous with gun tragedies. Columbine, Aurora, and now Boulder. This is the second mass shooting of this scale in just the last week in the U.S. In Washington, President Joe Biden made an appeal for Congress to restore the assault weapons ban and close loopholes in background checks immediately.
This is an American issue. It will save lives, American lives, and we have to act.
But lawmakers have so far been unwilling to act, blocked by Republicans who've rejected even modest gun controls, all but ensuring no end to the uniquely American cycle of mass shootings at the hands of lone gunmen. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
The defense minister and acting head of the Canadian Armed Forces were both in the hot seat today. A second parliamentary committee has begun investigating the treatment of women in the military. The meeting follows high-profile allegations against senior members of the forces, first brought to light by Global News. As Abigail Bimman reports, officials say efforts are underway to address sexual misconduct in the ranks.
We will eliminate the toxic culture of toxic masculinity that still exists.
The defense minister offered big promises but few answers as he was grilled by opposition MPs.
You're still not owning up to this. Then how do you expect the culture to shift?
Military police are currently investigating both former Chief of the Defense Staff Jonathan Vance and his replacement, Admiral Art MacDonald. 2 parliamentary committees are also digging in. The Status of Women Committee focusing on the culture and treatment of women in uniform.
Some of the gaps are becoming apparent, such as power dynamics and understanding the use of and abuse of power in a hierarchy like our own.
The new acting CDS says military members get annual sexual misconduct training, though he thinks once a year is not enough. Lieutenant General Wayne Eyre is promising a new code of conduct and boosting a support program with a single point of contact.
We are offering that from a centralized location, but we are currently looking at expanding that to have regional sites across the country.
But this week marks 6 years since a landmark report pointed to the endemic nature of sexual misconduct within the forces.
Can you talk about implementing the rest of the Deschamps report, your plans for that specifically?
Our plans are very immature at this point, but what we need to do is a stock taking.
A stock taking 6 years after those recommendations were made. The committee also heard the defense minister repeat an independent complaints reporting structure is in the works, but no details about what it will look like or when it will be ready. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
And late today, the military ended its review into allegations a member of the Navy made inappropriate sexualized comments that referenced a scene from 50 Shades of Grey during a meeting in January. The investigator concluded there was no service offense and closed the case. China is lashing out against Canada and other Western nations over sanctions for human rights violations. Beijing has countered with its own sanctions and is threatening further action. As Mike Couture reports, political experts believe it's a sign international pressure is working.
A day after Canada, the US, UK, and European Union hit China with coordinated sanctions for its treatment of Uyghurs, the Chinese Foreign Ministry struck back with a strong statement. These countries have claimed to be judges of human rights and acted as lecturers of human rights, says the spokesperson. A statement from the Chinese embassy in Ottawa even singled out Canada, saying it is in no position to act as a teacher on human rights issues. China also announced retaliatory sanctions against 10 people in the European Union and then ramped up the rhetoric against the coalition of Western countries. They will eventually pay the price for their foolishness and arrogance, she said.
There's an edge to it that I haven't seen for some time in terms of the precise language being used. A lot of references to the past, denigrating the importance of the North America and Europe as compared to the rest of the world.
I think they're caught between a rock and a hard place here.
Former diplomat Charles Burton believes China is getting very defensive, and it's a sign the coordinated international pressure is working.
Getting China to understand that everybody's interests are better served by playing by the rules.
Including not using hostage diplomacy, which many believe is what led to the detention and trials of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. Our ambassador, Dominic Barton, wasn't in China for the court proceedings. He's back here in Canada for high-level talks.
It's best to have an ambassador there, but I think it also is sending a signal of dissatisfaction, which is fully warranted in my view.
So far, China has not announced any retaliatory sanctions against Canadians, but it's widely believed that will eventually happen. Mike Lecouture, Global News, Ottawa.
Now to the fight against COVID-19. We have good news and bad news. First, the good news. Vaccinations are ramping up. As of tonight, more than 3.5 million Canadians have received at least one dose. That's about 9.3% of the population. Now here's the bad news. With new variants in the mix and many Canadians still not protected, case numbers are climbing. Over the last week, the number of cases confirmed per day in Canada jumped by 15%. Some provinces are reporting a growing number of younger Canadians getting very sick.
We have seen several young people in their 30s and 40s who've unfortunately, tragically, been severely affected by COVID. As we are protecting more and more older people, we're also seeing risk in younger people. And younger people are ending up in the ICU and needing ICU care for a longer period.
AstraZeneca is facing more turmoil over its COVID-19 vaccine. Just hours after the company released extremely positive results from its U.S. trial, American health officials cast doubt on the data used. They say AstraZeneca may have included outdated information, which may have given an incomplete view of the results. Yesterday, the company released data showing the vaccine was 79% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. But U.S. officials reportedly sent AstraZeneca a letter suggesting they overstated the results. They say more recent data shows the range may be 69 to 74% effective. AstraZeneca says it will release more up-to-date results within 48 hours. Health Canada says it will monitor that data, but the concerns in the U.S. do not change its position that Oxford AstraZeneca is safe and effective.
Based on the findings that we've seen, and even if there are some differences in terms of the final data points, really that the bottom line is that it doesn't change the recommendations. At this point in time, we, of course, believe that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine continue to outweigh the risks.
Canada has already received 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca shot from the Serum Institute in India. Another 1.5 million doses are expected from the U.S. in the next couple of weeks. Canada's Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines will soon contain a new warning label. Health Canada says it's following Europe and adding a warning about the potential risk of extremely rare blood clots. The European Medicines Agency completed a review last week after a very small number of reports of rare clotting in people who were vaccinated. The agency says the shot is safe, but it could not rule out a link. The NHL is postponing more of Montreal's games over COVID-19 fears until at least Sunday. 2 of the Canadians are on the league's protocol list, meaning they either have the coronavirus or they may have been exposed to it. Their test results are expected this week. The league hopes the Canadians can start practicing again on Monday. The Anaheim Ducks also canceled today's practice because a player is being tested for the virus. The Conservatives and climate change. Coming up, the polarizing topic that's igniting a fierce debate within the party. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is struggling to unite his party on what could be a make or break issue in the next election. A majority of the party's grassroots voted against his proposal to officially declare that climate change is real. Opposition parties are quick to pounce on the divide. Let's bring in our chief political correspondent, David Aiken. David, how does Erin O'Toole move forward on an issue that is top of mind for so many voters?
It might seem obvious to point this out, Robin, but Conservatives have to win over voters who right now are telling pollsters that they would not vote Conservatives. And one of the reasons that they're not voting Conservative is because of the party's climate change policy. Even the Conservative leader said as much.
Climate change is an important subject that Canadians want to see that we have a serious plan on. We will have that.
But the slim majority vote by the party's grassroots to reject a climate change declaration will hobble O'Toole's attempts to do that.
It is a test of being coherent. And that might prove a challenge for the Conservatives.
I think certainly makes a difference to voters. I think all Canadians agree that we are up against a crisis and that we need to do something about it.
O'Toole insists his yet-to-be-announced climate change plan will be a vote winner.
I will be focused on an economic recovery in all regions and in all sectors of this country, and a serious climate change plan too. Stay tuned, I know you'll like it.
For now, though, the only thing O'Toole has said about his plan is that he, like every Conservative leader before him, would cancel the federal carbon tax and rebate program. And that position is hugely popular in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and many rural parts of Canada. But to win government, O'Toole needs to reach the so-called persuadable voters in regions the Conservatives have not won in a decade, from Vancouver Island to urban and suburban Ontario and Quebec. And right now, multiple polls show that few of the persuadable voters in those regions are even considering switching to the Conservatives. And one big reason is a perception the party itself is not serious about climate change. And that vote at the party's convention seems to prove that point. Robin?
David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. By the way, the federal government will table the 2021 budget on April 19th. It will be the first official budget in more than 2 years and the first since the Liberals' minority win in 2019. The Trudeau government will need opposition support to pass it. Still ahead, hundreds unaccounted for after a deadly inferno at a refugee camp.
You're watching Global National.
Fields of charred rubble are all that's left after a fire swept through a tightly packed Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh. The death toll is at 15, but at least 400 people are still unaccounted for. And groups say barbed wire fences surrounding the camp made it difficult for people to escape. The UN's refugee agency says as many as 45,000 refugees have been displaced. The cause of the fire is still not known. However, it's believed exploding gas canisters fueled flames that burned for more than 10 hours. Israel's prime minister is holding the lead in the country's fourth election in 2 years, giving him a chance to form a coalition government. The vote is considered a referendum on Benjamin Netanyahu's rule. He is Israel's longest-serving head of government in power since 2009. His party campaigned on the country's successful vaccination rollout. Voting boxes were even brought to patients' bedsides today. His rivals say he is unfit to lead while fighting charges of fraud, breach of trust, and bribery. Evanston, Illinois, a Chicago suburb, is the first place in the United States to pay reparations to its black residents who have suffered decades of housing discrimination. City Council passed a plan to hand out $10 million over 10 years. Each eligible resident will receive up to $25,000. To qualify, applicants must be a black resident of Evanston between 1919 and 1969 or a direct descendant. Up next, the season that never was, how Canada crushed cases of the flu down to a few. Health workers are seen as the superheroes of this pandemic, and a well-known artist's depiction of this sentiment has just broken a record. The Banksy painting called Game Changer shows a young boy playing with a nurse action figure instead of Batman and Spider-Man. It sold for almost $30 million Canadian, setting an auction record for the elusive British street artist. Proceeds will go to supporting UK health charities. Chances are you didn't get the flu this year. There were so few cases in Canada that health officials were unable to declare the official start of the flu season. As Eric Sorensen explains, it's clear measures like wearing face masks and physical distancing made a big difference.
In a winter spent avoiding one another, a remarkable thing happened. The seasonal flu went away. Every year, up to 7 million Canadians normally get the flu. This winter? Did you get the flu this year? No, I didn't.
I didn't get the flu this year.
And Ellen Barbieri thinks it's obvious why she didn't get sick.
Haven't hugged, touched, seen anyone.
I wasn't going to the office downtown and touching all the doors and all the undergrounds. It seems the measures taken to hold off COVID-19 all but snuffed out influenza this past season. Laboratory-confirmed detections of flu usually total about 38,000 in a normal flu season. This winter, Canadian labs confirmed just 64 cases as of early March.
Influenza is actually at a historic low. And if there's just not enough virus circulating and with people social distancing and wearing masks, it's just not transmitting.
Here's the map of flu activity for the first week of March last year. There was flu all over the country. For the same time period this year, almost nothing. Last year was much more typical. The flu season began in November 2019 and it ended in March of 2020. The flu season lasted 18 weeks, about 4 months long. The flu season this year, it never began.
All this speaks to is the fact that our public health measures work for flu as well.
This infectious disease specialist says it's strong evidence just how dangerously virulent COVID-19 has been.
Left uncontrolled, this would have been absolutely devastating to the world.
The drastic reduction in flu will make it more difficult to predict what the next influenza threat will be. But experts say there is a lesson to carry forward of the value of social distancing and staying home when sick.
When you bring your viruses with you to work or to school, you're sharing those with the community.
Some just want to return to the way things were.
I'm looking forward to that, not having to be paranoid.
But others expect to be more careful in the future.
Maybe just more the elbow.
More conscious of the fact that we can all do more to limit the spread of viruses.
I'll probably just be a little more aware of my distance.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday night. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, Your Canada is downtown London, Ontario. We would love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be back at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I'll see you on Friday. Have a great night.